In the span of 3 hours, Ohio State's 2025 offensive staff has been finalized. Your new offensive coordinator is an in-house promotion in Brian Hartline, who's been the nation's best wide receivers coach for, I can't even describe how long. He's been elite ever since he stepped foot on Ohio State's campus. He was a great player and even better coach. He's the nation's best assistant coach who isn't a coordinator, although now he is a coordinator. So maybe he will be the nation's best coordinator and position coach. Who knows? That's certainly possible. Tyler Bowen is your new offensive line coach. Out goes Justin Frye to the Cardinals. In comes Tyler Bowen from Virginia Tech, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach of Virginia Tech, now Ohio State offensive line coach. And Billy Fessler, analyst who joined the staff for 1 year in 2024, he's the new quarterbacks coach. That's what's going on here in Columbus. All we are waiting for now, and maybe this will be announced today, I don't know, and then I'll have to do another breaking news video, is Ohio State's defensive coordinator. That's it. The offensive staff's been finalized. This is it now. You have Keenan Bailey as your tight ends coach. You have Carlos Loughlin as your running backs coach. You have Brian Hartline as your offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach. Tyler Bowen as your offensive line coach. And Billy Fessler as your quarterbacks coach. I think there is a non-zero chance, there is a great chance, in fact, that Ohio State may have upgraded their offensive staff here. I think a lot of it hinges on whether Brian Hartline is going to be a great or good play caller or not. I assume that he's still going to be elite as a position coach, as a wide receivers coach, because he has been in the past. He has been for several seasons. Even in 2023, when they tried to promote him to the offensive coordinator spot and they wanted him to call the plays and it didn't work out, his unit didn't really drop off at all outside of the injury sustained by Ibuka in the middle of the season. So I'm excited here to talk about these hires, to break them down a little bit, to give my instant reaction. Of course, College Football with Sam is a channel that is dedicated to deep dives and analysis, and you all know from the years that I've covered the sport that we'll be going in on the staffs and the rosters in depth when we do our Big Ten predictions, and as the preseason progresses, we'll get more information and talk more in depth about specific units or just specific teams in general. I love talking about teams for an hour each, for example, but I just want to give an instant reaction here because there's a lot to talk about, yes, but I feel like we can focus and pinpoint the fact that, again, there's a non-zero chance that Ohio State just upgraded their offensive staff, which is insane. It's insane because per ESPN, they had the most efficient offense in all of college football in 2024. It's insane because they lose a good amount, a good portion of their offensive line. The best players on their offensive line are gone. They lose Emeka Egbuka. They lose G. Scott. They lose both of their running backs who were All-American caliber, and they lost an All-American caliber QB. But it's Ohio State, and at Ohio State, you don't rebuild, you reload. And not many other programs can say that. In fact, no other program can say that in the way that Ohio State can, because Ohio State hasn't lost more than 2 games dating all the way back to 2011. It's been over a decade since Ohio State has lost, well, more than 2 games. If you don't want to count 2011, it's a few years even before that since Ohio State has lost more than 2 games in the same season. And the offense has been a huge part of that. It was that way with the early Urban Meyer teams where the offenses were better than the defenses. And for much of the Ryan Day era, it's been that the offenses are of similar caliber or better than the defenses. The offensive staff is often the heartbeat, the soul of the team. That's the identity, because Ryan Day is an offensive coach. It's what made 2024 and 2023 on defense so special. Is you had the nation's best DC in Jim Knowles, one of the nation's best head coaches in Ryan Day. In fact, he could be the nation's best. I think there is an argument, not the best one, but an argument for him to be the best head coach in college football right now. And I think that Brian Hartline's the nation's best wide receivers coach. Carlos Loughlin's one of the nation's best running backs coaches. Keenan Bailey certainly has potential to be one of the best tight end coaches. Same thing with Bowen for the offensive line. He's certainly an elite recruiter. And I also think that Chip Kelly was one of the better offensive coordinators and offensive minds in college football last year. And Brian Hartline, learning under Ryan Day year over year over year, learning under Chip Kelly, learning under Kevin Wilson, I think that he may be ready now compared to 2023. Now, I ultimately don't know. No one except for those inside Ohio State's facilities and inside of their offices know. And we'll figure that out as the 2025 season approaches and as Ohio State starts playing ball games. But again, I think there really is a non-zero chance that this offensive staff is better. And I said that when Justin Frye left. I thought it again in my mind when Chip Kelly left. Like, Ohio State could go out and they could get a big name. They could make some splash hires. And the funny thing about this whole thing breaking now is right as the Brian Hartline news broke, I actually was about to release about a 25, 30-minute video about who I thought would be the best candidates for the Ohio State offensive coordinator position, with the Tyler Bowen news in mind. I thought that Ohio State could go out and get a big name like Garrett Riley, Andy Kotelnicki, Will Stein, Shannon Dawson, Jeff Nixon, all these names who did very well with their circumstances and I think are some of the brightest younger minds in college football. And they could have went that route. Don't know if it would have worked because a lot of those names were at schools and positions that could have matched Ohio State's offers outside of Syracuse's Jeff Nixon, but Ohio State went a different way. And it's a way that they were going to have to make a choice about anyway because Brian Hartline has, gotten head coaching offers in the past. I think he wants to be a head coach. I think this allows Ohio State to keep him around for a bit longer. And let's say play calling doesn't work for Ohio State this year with Brian Hartline at the helm. Well, Ryan Day can call plays. Maybe Bowen can get involved with that as he has play calling experience, and Hartline can just be the nation's best wide receivers coach. Like there isn't much downside to promoting him to be the offensive coordinator, if any. The question is about the upside. The upside's limitless here. If he's learned from Ryan Day and Chip Kelly and Kevin Wilson all those years and he finally just is able to put it together and everything clicks, the upside's limitless. He could be one of the best play callers in the country in a short period of time because he's learned under some of the best minds and play callers in the country. The upside could also be nothing. He turns out he's once again not ready for play calling, at which point Ryan Day takes over, maybe along with Tyler Bowen. But then again, he's the nation's best receivers coach, and he has Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Brandon Inniss. This is great if you're Ohio State, I think. Even better in my mind, because let's say Ohio State, there were a few names where if Ohio State hired them at offensive coordinator, I might be more excited than Brian Hartline, but again, very few names. Like names that Ohio State would have had to pay more than Jim Knowles' salary at Penn State to probably get. And Hartline ultimately deserved the promotion. Tyler Bowen is someone I'm more excited for because Bowen is what Frye was not. He is what Frye could not be, would never be. He has upside that in part because of Frye being more of just a coach who wants to coach ball. That's why he did well at UCLA, why he might do well with the Cardinals, but why he was not good at all with Ohio State, in my own opinion. Because he doesn't want to recruit, he doesn't want to manage a roster, he just wants to coach ball and technique. There's a place for that, but not at Ohio State. And the beauty of it, if you're a Buckeye fan, is Bowen is not just an infinitely better recruiter, an infinitely better manager, but he also can contribute to the offense in terms of play calling and philosophy. He's been a play caller with Virginia Tech. And, well, he might be a better developer than Frye, which, again, I didn't just question Frye's recruitment or recruiting strategies. I also question his development too, because look, Ohio State has a bunch of 4-stars and they had a 5-star Donovan Jackson on the O-line. It's like they weren't really ever lacking talent. They just lacked depth. So was it the talent or was it Frye's development? Was it a mix of both? I don't know. But as an outsider, I always looked at Ohio State's O-line under Frye outside of really the 2022 season, which was mostly Studwara developed players and also Studwara recruits, and thought to myself, like, this guy's holding Ohio State back. And newsflash, most of you know, but if you're new to this channel, you don't. I'm a Michigan fan, but I'm probably a fan of elite football and elite football programs more than I am a fan of partisan cheerleading, only rooting for my team. And look, I didn't like Frye on a professional level, personal level. I imagine he's a great guy. The players say he is. From the standpoint that I thought he was holding Ohio State back. Wasn't recruiting well, he didn't have such generational development that he was compensating for the bad recruiting. That's for sure. Tyler Bowen recruited Landon Tengwall, who runs a wonderful YouTube channel talking about Penn State and college football in general. Check it out, just search his name. He does awesome work there. Hopefully we can get him on the channel at some point. But he recruited him out of high school. Theo Johnson, the tight end, out of high school. Rasheed Walker, Keziah Izzard, Anthony Wiggin, Devon J. Thomas, Brenton Strange, Zakee Wheatley, who's going to be one of the better safeties in the country this coming season, Olu Fashanu, who was a first-round offensive tackle, the first-team All-Big Ten offensive lineman for Penn State, and their first-round draft pick on the offensive line in the Franklin era. He also recruited Tyler Warren, who, what do you know, it's probably going to be a first-rounder for Penn State this coming season. And, he recruited Khalil Dinkins, who's still on the roster for Penn State, and so many others. He's a good recruiter, but I think even more importantly than that, he knows how to identify talent. Tengwall retired, not because he wasn't a good player. He had concussions, and he ultimately wanted to, make a choice that all football players who suffer with injuries have to make. It's a very hard one. And credit to Tengwall and his toughness and just who he is for making that decision and being able to create something new after football. It's very hard. I haven't played the sport, but I know from people who have talked about it, who have played the sport, like Andrew Luck, for example, it is hard. It is a challenge. But Tengwall was good when he was healthy. Theo Johnson was a good tight end. Keziah Izzard, good defensive tackle. Devon J. Thomas, even better defensive tackle. Brenton Strange was a good tight end. Zakee Wheatley, again, going to be one of the best safeties in the country at Penn State. Fashanu was an elite pass-blocking offensive tackle, elite offensive tackle overall with the Nittany Lions. Point being made, Ryan Day has wanted to make Ohio State a better rushing offense forever. This is actually possible now. Ohio State trying to run the spread option or the Chip Kelly concepts they wanted to run with last year's offensive line post-injury was one of the most disgusting things I've ever watched. It was the Michigan game, for context, was Scott Frost level bad. It was the same thing with the Nebraska game. Under no circumstances do you run the football in that way and that many times when your O-line is just as bad as it was in those games. But that's on Frye. It was partially on Kelly. But also, I think if they, recruited and developed better on the O-line, they could do that. They could run the concepts they wanted to run. And of course, it didn't matter because Ohio State went 14-2 anyway and won it all. But at the same time, it also does matter because it helps raise your ceiling and raise your floor. Ohio State doesn't lose 2 games if they have an elite offensive line with this team. They go 16-0 and they're remembered as one of the greatest teams of all time, potentially. That's not the case because of the offensive line. With the offensive line's injuries and some of their questionable play, they could have went 9-3 or even 8-4 with the close games they played in and missed the playoffs entirely. The season would be a failure and maybe Day would be on the hot seat. Of course, they won it all. That's hypotheticals. But if you want to shore up your ceiling, you want to shore up your floor, you want to progress as a program, you hire Tyler Bowen. You make an upgrade on the O-line coach. And Ryan Day did. And I think for that, you have to give a lot of kudos to Ryan Day because he made a coaching staff upgrade. He went out and he poached an offensive coordinator to be his offensive line coach from one Power 4 school to another. Credit, Ohio State's a much better program than Virginia Tech. They have much more resources. But anyway, It's impressive. People want to work for Ryan Day, and Ryan Day didn't succumb to hubris. He went out, he was aggressive with the offensive line coach hire, more internal and more conservative with the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach hire, but that's not a bad thing either, because again, you don't have a lot of potential for a bad floor with Brian Hartline. You have the limitless ceiling. He's the nation's best wide receivers coach and best assistant coach that isn't a coordinator or wasn't a coordinator. Now, of course, he is. And as for Billy Fessler, I don't know much about Billy Fessler, but I know he was an analyst who I believe was involved with the quarterbacks for Ohio State's 2024 season, which means he helped out with Will Howard, and he was a phenomenal player this year. And ultimately, I err on the side of trusting Ryan Day. I do. There were some names that were circled for the defensive coordinator position or even the OC position where I thought to myself, I don't know. That could be a genuinely bad hire. But in my mind, I refuse to call it a bad hire and would at worst say it was an average or above average hire. Maybe not to Ohio State standard, but still above average or good for the rest of the Power Four, because I automatically just trust Day to a certain degree. I just do. Even when I picked against Ryan Day in 2024 in certain games, it wasn't because I didn't think he was an elite coach or a near elite coach or because I didn't trust him. It was more so because of what I thought were certain roster limitations that either could be negated in a way that at the time I didn't see, or they were fixed either during the playoffs or in response to, let's say, the Oregon loss, or for the playoffs in response to the Michigan loss. Day's one of the best head coaches in the country. He has one of the best offensive staffs in the country. And if any of these hires don't pan out, I think he'll go out and make another great hire. And again, for the offensive coordinator spot, Day can call plays. And I imagine that after 2023, they wouldn't be promoting Hartline and giving him full control of the offense if they at least didn't partially trust him and thought that he has majorly improved in that regard compared to 2023 when Day had to take over full responsibility. Basically, Day was the de facto offensive coordinator in 2023. He wanted Hartline to be the de facto OC, but he couldn't be, so he had to take over that spot. Day wouldn't be promoting Hartline if not for the fact that he's ready. He's ready. So that's what I wanted to talk about in this breaking news segment, is really Ohio State has hired an elite recruiter to be their O-line coach. They already have an elite recruiter at wide receivers coach in Brian Hartline. They promoted him to be the OC. That might make Ohio State even more attractive from a recruiting angle overall on the offense. And if Hartline is an elite play caller, he's ready to call plays, but being ready to call plays versus being an elite play caller are two different things. If he's an elite play caller or even just a great one, I think this staff overall is a better offensive staff than what Ohio State had in 2024. I'm serious. They're set up to have success in the future. Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes are for sure. This is a team that is going to fulfill what Ryan Day said he wanted. That is being the first Ohio State head coach since Woody Hayes to win multiple national titles. I wouldn't be shocked if these hires, especially the Tyler Bowen hire, was viewed as the beginning, as the starting point for Ryan Day's second national championship. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thanks to Crash2488, Brasco Rascal, and Carlo OH for being Heisman members. Thanks to Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus for being all-conference members. Remember to subscribe, like the video, check out the Patreon page, merchandise store, and Discord server via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I will see you guys very soon. Go Buckeyes.